Thanks for joining us on episode 991 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Kyle Sullivan. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, talent, and treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to find and live your championship run is key. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mader. Ultimately, there's going to be an Unleash the Champ Foundation. Because when I think back to my life, if I would have been able to have elementary, middle school, high school, the teaching of leadership, age appropriately, I think there's some pitfalls that I could have avoided. And so that's one of the things that I have no clue how it's going to go, but I'm excited about it.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's interview with Kyle Sullivan, I asked Kyle to share with you what he sees holding most people back from having a real impact on the world. I also asked Kyle to share with you his top tips on what you can do to make that impact yourself. And Kyle also shares with you the legacy he hopes he can leave behind.
One reason I like to bring you great interviews like the one you're going to hear today is because of the power in learning from others. Another great way to learn from others is through reading books. But if you're like most people today, you find it hard to find the time to sit down and read. And that's why today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Go to inspiredstewardship.com/audible to sign up, and you can get a 30-day free trial. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from, and instead of reading, you can listen your way to learn from some of the greatest minds out there. That's inspiredstewardship.com/audible to get your free trial and listen to great books the same way you're listening to this podcast.
What does a D1 athlete, drug dealer, husband, pastor, father, and founder of a coaching company have in common? You might be surprised to learn that these are all stages of life for Kyle Sullivan. It's quite the journey, and all paths have built upon and led to the creation of Unleash the Champ. Kyle founded Unleash the Champ to create powerful coaching experiences for people and organizations that lead to discovering and stepping into the champion they were created to be. With over 10 years of organizational leadership and team development, leading thousands of people, plus a growing desire to learn it all, he strives to inspire people everywhere to unlock the cages they are in and unleash the champ within. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Hey, Scott, I am super excited to be on today and to have this conversation.
Given what we've been talking about over these last 4 weeks, Kyle, when you look at people around you and you look at the folks that are coming to you as a coaching client, surrounding you in your own circles, what do you think is holding most people back from having the impact that they could be having?
Yeah, we said it a few different ways in the previous episodes, but it really is, one, not knowing what you want. Two, not having the courage to step out. Three, not having the support to keep you when you want to quit. And then I would say the fourth one would say you're just too comfortable. You're holding yourself back. If you're not where you're at in life, with a small percentage, we're going to give a caveat to that. There's circumstances too deep, too dark, too bad. So we love you, but we're not talking to you right now. We're talking to the other 98% of the population that can control what happens to them. Take a step. Get out of the cage of comfort, the cage of security, the cage of complacency, and just be willing to look stupid, be willing to be questioned, be willing to get hit time and time again and keep getting up. Because you have to be willing to look crazy in one season before you can be called champion in another.
So if someone really wants to make what I call a dent in the universe, what are the top 2 or 3 principles that they really need to focus on or learn or apply to be able to do that?
Lead yourself first. Figure out what problem you want to solve and be obsessed about solving it. So for me, man, I'm committed to my championship run. 2, the problem I solve is there's too many people and organizations living well below their potential. 3, I'm going to get loud about it and bang the drum of Unleash the Champ until the date on the other side of the dash of my tombstone. And so what is that thing that can make you so passionate that it doesn't matter the pain, it doesn't matter the circumstances, it doesn't matter the victories, doesn't matter. You're going to wake up and just, man, this is my drum. I'm going to keep pounding it. And when you do that, you're going to make a crater, not just a dent. You're going to make a crater in the universe.
So let's switch gears here for a minute. I'm going to jokingly ask you what I call the easy question now. If I was able to invent a machine and pick you up from today and get you to travel into the far future, you just mentioned that dash. I got you on the other side of that dash, and you're now able to look back on your life. What impact do you hope you've had on the world?
The first one would be, I hope my kids know and my wife knows that they're a champion. So that's the first and most important group I get to influence. Second, that there's millions, if not tens of millions of people who really embrace this Unleash the Champ mentality and that they're living it out how it applies to them. And I think being able to do that, my family, knowing that, man, dad, husband, granddad understands, man, that y'all are the most important and most fun group to influence. But then there's a world full of champions that have defined what theirs is and they're running after it.
So what's coming next for Kyle on this journey as you live out your call and do that and begin impacting the world and spreading that message?
Ooh-wee. That could be a whole nother episode. Man, some of the things that will be in the future is we have a podcast that we launched in March, Unleash the Champ Leadership Podcast, where people are getting practical interviews, much like you and I are doing. I get the honor of interviewing guests, and then there's practical leadership every other week, easily applied to that championship run. There's books that are bouncing around in my head. Scott, one day there's going to be a Unleash the Champ conference when we get on the other side and actually be able to meet and gather and do it freely. And then ultimately, I have no clue how this is going to happen, man. Man, there's been a few in these previous episodes where I've never said this publicly.
Another world reveal.
Ultimately, there's going to be an Unleash the Champ Foundation. Because when I think back to my life, if I would have been able to have elementary, middle school, high school, the teaching of leadership, age appropriately, I think there's some pitfalls that I could have avoided. And so that's one of the things that I have no clue how it's going to go, but I'm excited about it.
You can follow Kyle on Facebook is Kyle John Sullivan, or find him over on his website at kylejsullivan.com. He's also active on LinkedIn as Kyle John Sullivan, and on Instagram as Kyle J. Sullivan. I'll, of course, have links to all of that over in the show notes as well. Kyle, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listener?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm learning most in my current assignment of my championship run is that oftentimes we want peace. That's what we want in decisions. But peace is rarely preceded without action and obedience. And so understanding that the peace you want, you'll gain when you take action, not just when you think about it.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.